See what happens. If it doesn't, sometimes it goes off and then it goes back on. Sometimes it works. Let's give it a chance. Okay, I need a volunteer to write on the board. Do we have one? Okay. So, this course is called 6 Human Needs. And these are not desires. These are not goals. They're not hopes. They're not wishes. They're needs that every one in the world has. And these are the needs that motivate all actions. And the needs can be related materially or spiritually, but everyone has these needs. So, we're going to write down the 6 needs and we're going to discuss them. So the first need is the need for security. So you're going to have to write 6, so make room for 6. Security. And I'll briefly explain them and then we'll go back. So I have a question for you. If this roof was not built solidly and it could crack at any moment, and this floor could collapse at any moment, would any of you come in this room? No. You need to know this floor is not going to collapse, and you need to know the roof is not going to collapse. Yes? You agree? That's a need for security. We have a need to know that something is true, something is stable, something is reliable. If you relate that to spiritual life, we have a need to know what is true. Right? So you look for Krishna consciousness because you need security, you need spiritual security. You want to know what is true, and you want to know how to get out of the material world. That's a need for security, right? You don't want a spiritual master who can't tell you how to get out of the material world. You don't want a religion that can't answer all your questions. We all have needs for security. You want to know when you go home today, your house is still there. Right? You want to know when you work for this company 40, 50, 60 hours a week, at the end of the week, you're going to get paid. When they said they're going to give you a vacation, you want to make sure you get it. That's a need. So we all have a need for security. Like another example of security would be like a regular schedule every day. Sadhana. Get up at the same time, chant at the same time. If every day it was different, it would be disturbing to the mind, wouldn't it? If Mangal Arati were one day at 4:30, one day at 8, one day at 2:30, that wouldn't work. You say, what time's Mangal Arati? Oh, whenever we do it. Some temples are a little bit like that. Not ISKCON, but outside of ISKCON. So you say, well, I want to come to Mangal Arati, it takes me an hour, I need to know what time it is. Well, sometimes it's at 4, 5, 6, sometimes we don't even have it. So you have a need for stability, right? So so you understand it's not a desire, it's a human need which motivates action and which enables us to function. We'll talk about this more. The next need is just the opposite. It's for variety. So what that means is, if your life is so secure that every moment of the day it's the same, you get up at the same time, you brush your teeth at the same time for the same number of seconds, you chant your rounds exactly 6 minutes, 58 seconds every day, you finish your rounds exactly the same time, you go to work at the same time, you come home at the same time. After a while it would get boring. So the human needs variety, right? So in Krishna consciousness, we need regulation But then sometimes we go to Vrindavan, we have Janmashtami, we have guest speakers and so forth. So we have sometimes surprise birthday parties. Sometimes we need surprises. We need variety. We go on vacations, go to new places. So we also need variety. You agree? The third need is the need for significance. This is not about pride. Everybody needs to feel that their life is valuable, right? That your life is worthwhile, that there's some kind of purpose and meaning to your life, right? If you feel no purpose, why would you want to live? We all like to be appreciated, don't we? We all like to be valued, don't we? So it's a human need to feel that your life is valuable. When you feel your life is not valuable, you kill yourself, isn't it? What's the need to live? My life is not valuable, so I kill myself. So everyone needs to feel that when I get out of bed, I'm going to do something that has some value to my family, to my community, to my company, to my friends, to my spiritual master, to the movement, to somebody. I'm valuable to somebody, right? That's an inherent human need. And that's why when we're appreciated, it feels so good. Does it feel good to be appreciated? Do you like to be appreciated? Yeah. Because it's a human need. Prabhupada appreciated devotees a lot. The next need is for love and connection. If you take a baby, you separate it from its parents, and you hire someone to feed it, change its diapers, but you tell that person, don't touch the baby when you do it, the baby will die. Did you know that? It can't live without affection and connection. Sometimes in our preaching, we say that Mayavadi philosophy is like being in prison in solitary confinement. You're in a cell and you're by yourself. You ever use that example? Because solitary confinement is torture. If you're just by yourself and there's no connection, you go crazy. And our philosophy is even the Mayavadis go crazy. Avrura krichena param padam tata padant yado. They go up to Brahman and they come back. So the need for connection, it's even there amongst Mayavadis, who give up all connection and merge in Brahman. And they can't stay there because they get bored. We can't be alone, we can't be in solitary confinement. We need connection. Babies can't live without it. So everyone needs connection. You agree? And if your relationships go bad, what happens? And you have no friends, you become depressed. Isn't it? So it's a human need to be loved, to give love, and to have connection with other people. The next human need is the need to grow. To become better. Because it is said, you learned in science, living things grow. The difference between dead things, between matter and life, is matter doesn't grow and living things grow. So we're all living things, but if we don't grow, we tend to die. Do you know that people who retire early usually die younger than people who retire late? Because once they retire, they stop working, they stop growing, and their life has kind of no purpose. And they don't live as long as people who stay active and work or become volunteers. Did you know that? So when you retire, you should come to the temple every day and do service. So you'll still be growing and you'll still have significance. Otherwise, you lose your energy. Does that make sense? And the last human need is contribution, is to help others, to give to others. Now, I was thinking about these. It's quite interesting if you look at these. Why did you become a devotee? You wanted to know the truth, that's security. Prasadam had a lot of variety. And the deities were dressed differently every day. And there's a lot of variety in Krishna consciousness. And you wanted to feel your life had meaning, right? You were thinking, what's the purpose of my life? It has no meaning. I'm just working, making money, raising a family. It must be for something more. So you came to find significance. And then, because you're spiritually interested, you want to be with people who are spiritually interested. And you realize at some point, if I'm going to be Krishna conscious, I have to associate with Krishna conscious people. At least for me, one of the reasons I became a devotee is because I realized I couldn't find people like devotees anywhere else. And these are the people I wanted to be connected to. So there's a very strong need for community and for connection when we become interested in Krishna consciousness. You agree? Supportive community. We want to connect with devotees. And then, of course, Krishna consciousness is all about growing, isn't it? And it's all about contributing. You grow and then you give. As Mahaprabhu said, become Krishna conscious, live it, and then give it. Live it yourself, be an example, and give it. So, when we look at these 6 needs, we can see these are the 6 reasons people come to Krishna consciousness to fulfill all these needs. Isn't that interesting? Usually, when you do something every day and you can't stop doing it, it's because it's fulfilling at least 3 of your needs. Like ISIS, for example. What need, if you join ISIS, what's a big need you have? What need are you fulfilling? If you become a terrorist, what's the need? Security is one. Significance. Contribution. And it's said that if you find an activity that fulfills at least 3 of your needs, you become addicted to that activity. You can't stop doing it because it's fulfilling so many important needs. And Krishna consciousness is amazing. It fulfills all 6. Now, what's interesting about understanding this? What's interesting is that you know when you're bringing people to Krishna consciousness, if you can help them fulfill these needs, they'll become Krishna conscious. Isn't that interesting? And you know when they're becoming interested, these are human needs everyone has. And so they're looking, do you have the answers? Do you have the association? Do you have the variety? If I do this, will my life be valuable? If I do this, will I grow as a person? If I do this, can I help other people? Isn't that interesting? And I think what's also interesting is after devotees come, as an organization, or as leaders of the organization, or as counselors and teachers of the organization, we have to continue to make sure these 6 needs are being met. Right? So we give devotees enough time to do sadhana and study so that they grow. We give them service which is in line with their nature so they feel they're contributing. If we help them grow, they'll feel their life has meaning. We send them to Mayapur, Vrindavan, Bhakti Shastri. There's variety, right? We give them a spiritual master who won't fall down. We give them scriptures that are true. There's security, right? When a big leader falls down, what happens? The need for security is broken, and many people have left Krishna consciousness because security and faith, they're tied together, isn't it? I want to know this is true. And if you convince me it's true, then I feel secure. But if you break my trust by falling, then I may lose my security. Or if relationships go bad, then connection is bad. I lost connection. If I'm working so hard I don't have time for sadhana, then I'm not growing. Or I'm not feeling significant. I'm just battling with Maya, and if I battle with Maya, I feel useless, don't I? I don't feel like I can contribute because I'm not strong. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so now we're going to go a little more deeply into these, and I have notes in my notebook, and I have 2 files on my computer, and I'm completely disorganized because I've never taught this before. So we're going to go a little slow as I'm learning this as I'm teaching this also. I mean, I know the subject, but in terms of organizing it. So I'm going to give you some synonyms. We're going to start with security, and I'll give you some synonyms for security so we can broaden our understanding what it means. So, certainty. Comfort. Comfort. In other words, comfort means I'm in a secure situation where I'm not going to be attacked. I'm not going to be killed or harmed. I'm safe. So, feeling safe is another synonym for security. Like I said, you feel safe, the roof's not going to cave in. When you take an airplane from a reputable organization, you feel safe, right? I'm flying to Poland on Aeroflot. It's a Russian airline. Aeroflot, 30 years ago, I don't think people felt safe on it. It's probably better now. But there were airlines 30 years ago that people didn't feel safe on. So, security, certainty, feeling safe, stability. I just bought an apartment. I need to know it's not going to fall over if there's an earthquake. Or in 50 we're insecure. One of my needs is not being met right now. And as we said, protection. Protection is a form of certainty. The government will protect you. Right? I just sat in front of a fire for an hour and a half, so I'm a bit thirsty. Excuse me. And predictability. Could you imagine if every time you cook potato sabji with the same recipe, it came out different, and the sabji's transformed into something else? That would drive you crazy, wouldn't it? And when you have relationships with people who are unpredictable, sometimes it can drive you mad, isn't it? Because you tell him to do something, but you don't know what he's going to do. You're not sure he's going to do what So we require, especially managers require predictability, right? And now they have this new science, what is it called? You analyze data, and then you can predict the future. And so then you can do your marketing based on the data. So it's all about predictability. We do compatibility if we're going to get married, because we want to make sure as best we can, this marriage is going to work. Right? We don't want surprises. You will get surprises, but you don't want them. As much as possible, you want to know, if you want to predict that it's going to work, right? So, now here's the interesting thing. What gives me security and gives you security and gives you security and predictability may be different. So it's not the same for all of us, right? So here's an example. For you need to go to the best university and get the best job you possibly can. For you, that gives you certainty. For somebody else, any job is okay. As long as they have a job, that's good enough for them. So the need for stability is different. For a sannyasi, their need for certainty is different than the need of a grihastha. Right? He might just say, whenever I travel, I need my lunch at 12 o'clock, and I just want juice for breakfast, and I want milk at night. And he needs that certainty to maintain his health, right? But for you need something more. You have more to maintain. And you may have higher standards, so you need a higher paying job. You need more facility. And for you might need your children to go to America or England to go to college. You don't want them to go to college here. That's your level of stability. You need them to go to Harvard Business School. Nothing less than that, right? And if anything less than that, you're in anxiety. Some people are like that, right? That's their stability. And for someone else, if they just get out of college and work in a petrol station, they're happy. So, there's so many examples. Now, as we said, stability, certainty will be different for all of us. If I have good health, maybe to me, that's the most important stability of my life. For you, maybe it's money. For someone else, it's a good family. For someone else, it's a big position. Someone else, it's a big mansion. We all have different needs for it. We'll talk a little more about it. But the other thing, which is the most important thing in this course, is that the way you fulfill your need may be healthy or it may be unhealthy. We said that everybody's going to fulfill their need for certainty. But you may do it in a healthy way or you may do it in an unhealthy way. And obviously an unhealthy way is going to harm you. So you want to discuss some unhealthy ways? So you know what I'm talking about? Where is it plugged? So I'm just going to go over some things I said, but a little more, because I told you I'm disorganized. So you'll get to hear some things over. Is that okay? It's said that these needs are built into the human nervous system. Like the need for this roof not to crash on our head, that's built into the nervous system. The need not to be in pain is built into the nervous system. So certainty, all these needs are, they're, as I said, they're not desires, they're not hopes, they're not goals, intentions. They're built into our psyche. So the need for certainty is the need to know, for example, when you're driving on the left side of the road, you need to know that all the traffic going against the other direction is also driving on the left side. Otherwise, it's difficult to drive on the left side. Of course, it's hard to say that in India because you do that, but people would understand it in other countries better. But you get the picture, right? You know. Well, let's get a better example. When you're driving down the road and there's a green light, you need to be certain that everyone who's coming the other direction has a red light. The red light works, they see it and they stop. Right? That's the need for certainty. Because if you didn't have that certainty, you would stop at every green light and you would look. And you'd be a little nervous. Now, after 9/11, I don't know about in India, but after 9/11, airline travel went down about 80%. Because people lost certainty because there were so-called, I don't know if it actually happened, but there were hijackings. We were told there were hijackings. And we were told planes were flown into buildings. Although they interviewed people who were on the ground and who were looking at the building before it blew up and they never saw any airplanes. But that's another conversation. But we'll go with the accepted, we'll go with the accepted idea. And so people lost certainty that they could fly, that flying was safe. They felt that maybe the plane will be hijacked. Right? So I don't know about India. In America, it was like hardly anybody was flying after 9/11. And it took months and months and months of safe airline travel before the numbers built up again. I think it must have took almost a year before the numbers built up again. If you know anything about economics, not that I'm an expert, but stock market values go up when investors feel confident that markets are going to go up, not because markets are going up, because they feel confident. So what happened in America was the economy recovered way long before the stock market recovered. Because although the economy was recovered, people didn't have faith. They didn't perceive it as recovered. So even though it was recovered, they didn't feel it was recovered, so they didn't invest. They weren't certain. Did you know that? The stock market is not as much about what's happening, but about as much as what you believe will happen. Should I wipe my forehead? Hare Krishna. Okay. So you won't invest unless you're certain. Now I have a friend, he made a big investment thinking Trump would lose. He made a big investment thinking there would be no Brexit. So he had that security and it was broken. Okay? So, all right. Some people get certainty through faith, religious faith. Some through routine. Some people get certainty by being with people who aren't as smart as them, so they can feel smarter. Did you know that? That way you can feel like you're in control. Some people get certainty by controlling other people. Now, if you like to control other people, this may come as news to you that the reason you're doing it is to fulfill the need of certainty. That's kind of an interesting perspective on it, isn't it? Some people have this kind of certainty, that no matter what happens, they'll figure out how to solve the problem. So that's a mentality that creates certainty. Whatever happens, we'll work it out. We'll solve the problem. We'll make it work. That's a kind of certainty. So here's an unhealthy way. Here's some unhealthy ways to fulfill the need for certainty. You can get angry. Anger creates certainty for a little while. Because you're certainly angry. How does anger create certainty? Who can tell me? You control somebody else. You can be in charge. Like when you're angry, you are now controlling. So anger is an unhealthy way to get certainty because the control doesn't last. So sometimes we feel the need for a while, but it's not sustainable. So that's an example. You get certainty through anger. Now you're in charge. Everyone's afraid of you. But in a half an hour, then you're regretting your behavior. And you're no longer angry, and you're no longer in charge. You can use drugs or alcohol or smoke. That'll give you some kind of certainty. Right? If you take alcohol, it creates the certainty that you'll forget your problems. Doesn't it? It has a certainty that you'll feel good for a while. Take drugs, you feel good for a while. So it creates it so you know if I smoke marijuana, I'll feel good for a while. If I smoke a cigarette, I'll feel good for a while. And then later, I'll want to do it again. But there's a you know what's going to happen. At least for a while. So those are unhealthy ways. Now here's a real weird one. Some people feel the need for certainty by having problems. And I'll explain. They have a problem and they don't get rid of the problem. How does that feel a need for certainty? Let's say you have a job and you have a boss and you don't get along and you suffer. It fulfills the need for certainty because at least you have a job, right? But there's another example. Let's say a lot of people have very bad relationships, even abusive relationships. In America, there are so many abusive relationships that they have shelters for women who are being physically abused by their husbands because they have no place to go that's safe. So these men are drunkards, they come home drunk, they spend all the money on alcohol, they're beating their wives every few days, screaming at the kids. And sometimes the women, they get injured Like seriously injured, it's not safe. And you might think, well, if they're getting seriously injured, they shouldn't leave. But there's a certainty there that they have a place to go home. And so they don't give it up. Have you seen that? Yeah, it's well, what if I leave him? Then what? Then it's uncertain. But in the section on connection, we're going to talk a little more about why someone would keep a problem. It's kind of interesting because problems give you security, because you can always take shelter of the problem and then blame all your problems on the problem. And that gives you an excuse, so that gives you certainty. Why are you a failure? It's because of him. So as long as I can blame him, that creates some certainty in my life. He's the anchor of my failure. So having the problem gives me an excuse, and that gives me, I don't have to face the reality, so it gives me stability, that I could avoid reality by blaming somebody. Did that confuse you? Should I say it again? They're going, yes, it confused you, or yes, I should say it again, and yes, I didn't understand. Yeah. If you're failing in life, usually one of the reasons you're failing in one area of your life over and over again is because you have some excuse, which involves a person you're blaming. So that's your stability. It's not my fault, it's their fault. So that's my stability. And I don't have to face the reality that it's my fault. I can just blame you. So the problem becomes my certainty. This is exactly why I have a problem. It's you. So there's stability. Isn't that interesting? I'm fulfilling my need for stability by blaming you for my problems. Does that make sense? You know, a lot of times we do things that don't make sense. So sometimes it's not going to make sense. That's what human beings do. They sometimes do things that don't make sense. Like in our forgiveness workshop, we asked the devotees, it said, why would you hold on to resentment? What do you get from it? And they said, I get to blame somebody. And then I don't have to take responsibility for my failure because I can blame them. They found, I don't know in India, but they found in America that most alcoholics blame somebody for their alcoholism. You know, you weren't a good father, you weren't a good uncle, you always put me down, you told me I was never going to become successful. So it's your fault that I'm an alcoholic. And they have a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a 12-step program to become free from alcohol. It's world famous. And in the Alcoholics Anonymous program, forgiveness is the foundation. Because they're blaming somebody for their problem and they're not taking responsibility for it, so they have to forgive to take responsibility for it. So you get stability by blaming someone else, because then you can avoid being responsible. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now here's an interesting thing. This is very interesting. You may give up your values to meet your needs. Needs are so intrinsic, you may give up values. You may value honesty. So, how many of you value honesty? Raise your hand. Keep your hands up. How many of you have lied in your life? So all the hands that valued honesty are still up, right? So that means you had a need to fulfill, and so you lied. You went against your values, right? Isn't that interesting? So human needs are so fundamental that sometimes we'll go against what we believe is right to fulfill the need. Yes? Okay, so here are some other negative ways you get certainty. You can hoard wealth, hold on to abusive relationships. You can avoid challenges, avoid changing. You've heard of the term comfort zone, right? Comfort zone means you're comfortable with the way things are, and you don't want to change anything, even though it would be better to change. So that's one way you get certainty. You just don't change anything. But that's an unhealthy way. Like, maybe you have a problem, but you pretend you don't have a problem. You ever do that? You have a problem and you pretend you don't. You lock it in the closet, throw away the key. And 10 years later you find the key, open the closet, and the problem is still there. It's just dusty now. But you get some certainty in an unhealthy way because you pretend the problem is gone. In America we call it skeletons in the closet. You've heard that saying? All your problems. One day roses, one day, apples, They're not some variety, it's not fun, right? Even though you come home every day, 7 o'clock, exactly, some variety is good. Yes? Ladies, you agree? If it's the same every day, it's boring, right? And that's why people go to Bollywood movies, because their life is so boring, they want to look at someone's life that's more exciting. Isn't it? Marriage is, it can't get that exciting when you have 3 kids and 2 jobs, It's just, it's just basically routines that are hard work, right? So we need vacations, we need to, do things, we need variety, right? So those Bollywood movies are full of variety, aren't they? So, here are some synonyms for variety. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is like surprise. It's like, if I know my birthday party is next week at 6 o'clock, that's nice. But if nobody's planning a party and I come home at 6 and there's a big party, that's nicer, isn't it? It's more exciting. So, fear. What's fear? Go climb the top of Mount Everest if you want to know what fear is. But some people do that, right? They risk their life to climb the Himalaya mountains. It's a lot of variety, right? Life gets pretty boring. That's pretty exciting, isn't it? There are people who have ridden waves 100 feet high. If you could imagine a wall of water like 5 times higher than this room. And if they fall off, that's it. Because the force of that water will throw their body apart. And that's variety. It's fear. It's excitement. And some people have that DNA. You're already scared just thinking about it, right? So your variety is to go on YouTube and watch the video of them riding the 100-foot wave. Quite amazing. Instability, surprise, Variety. Variety is the spice of life. You can get variety by learning, by growing, having new goals. Japa can give you variety if you go deeper. Sometimes we make things difficult in our life, and that gives us variety. Did you know that? Sometimes we subconsciously create problems. I used to do that all the time. I never liked to be early. I always liked to show up 1 second before. I don't know, I guess I felt that was exciting. Pretty much I'm always the last one on the airplane. Because if you can't be number one, at least you could be the last. No, it's kind of exciting to be the first one on the airplane. And it's kind of exciting to be the last one on the airplane. But to be number two and the last one, that's not exciting. Right? So if you understand this, you'll see that maybe I had a friend, he was a manager, a devotee, and he used to create problems subconsciously, because then he'd have to solve them, and then his life became exciting. You believe that? It's absolutely true. 100% true. And his management, it was crisis management, because if you put out fires, it's exciting. So subconsciously he created a crisis. So he'd have fires to put out. So his life was quite exciting. He was busy all day. Some of you like to be busy all day, and subconsciously you create problems so you'll have things to deal with. Right? Or you'll just be buying stuff, so you'll have stuff to move around and look at and take back and get it tailored or what You just create problems for yourself. You'll be busy. So, you've seen that before? Have any of you seen that? People creating problems to keep their life exciting? So I'll tell you what this devotee did. He thrived on crisis. So subconsciously he would never manage well enough that there wouldn't be a crisis. He didn't know that, but we could see that. So his management was disturbing us. So one year during the Christmas marathon, which he always managed, we said, you don't have to manage it, we'll manage it. So we formed a management team that was highly efficient. And it was so efficient, it didn't feel like the Christmas marathon, because all the devotees were out of the temple by 8 o'clock, and there was no crisis. Everything was organized. We had cars lined up full of books. Everyone was assigned. We had all the locations they were going to, all the permits they needed, and it was like clockwork, right? So he was watching it happen, and he was going absolutely insane because he had nothing to do. And his feeling of significance was tied to his variety, because when there were problems, he could put them out and he would feel significant. And he was absolutely nuts. He was twiddling his thumbs. He didn't know what to do because everything was going on perfectly smoothly. He was sitting by the phone waiting for a crisis, and the phone wouldn't ring. And he was going absolutely insane, I swear. It's a true story. Can you to meet when you do, but also understanding other people's needs so you can help them, because you can, people having trouble, when you understand these needs, you can start to see, I think he's trying to fulfill this need for variety or significance, and he's actually creating problems for himself. And so then you can help him, you can show him that, or you can see that in yourself. Or somebody's, I was speaking to a devotee today, and he was very discouraged. And it was because his need for significance had been undermined, completely undermined. And he was feeling depressed. And I could understand that because I understand these needs. You know, he was significant before, now not so significant, not feeling appreciated, and also not feeling connection. Significance and connection were taken away from him. And he lost his impetus in Krishna consciousness, just because those two needs weren't being met. Isn't that interesting? Some days he chants, some days he doesn't, because when those needs aren't being met, then he feels depressed. So if you're counseling people and you understand this, you could be thinking, okay, what needs are they not meeting, or how are they meeting these needs in unhealthy ways? Now, here's an example. Sometimes you can fulfill the need for variety and certainty at the same time. How would you do that? You would go to a movie you've already seen. Why? Because you know it's a good movie. So there's certainty. But why would you go if you've already seen it? Because you hope that you're going to get something new from it. Second time I see it, maybe I'll get more from it, so there'll be variety. I'm certain it's a good movie, and I'm also looking for variety, new meanings, going deeper. Does that make sense? So sometimes they both go together. You get certainty and variety from the same thing. Okay, now here, drama. So nothing happens, but it becomes a drama, right? You know anybody like that who creates dramas out of nothing? Yeah. They're trying to fulfill a need for variety because their life is boring. So they create dramas in their life. We call them drama queens. It seems it's only the women who create the dramas because we don't have a word for men. We don't have drama kings, we only have drama queens. Or maybe that's just a male terminology. Does that make sense? Life is boring, so I create imaginary scenarios and I get all upset about them and I think things are worse than they are, and it can border on insanity. The spies are following me, I know they are. The Russians have tapped my phone. That's what happens when people go crazy. So it's kind of like a little seed of that craziness, and it creates drama. Okay. You do dangerous sports, like we said. Ski down steep mountains, ride big waves, flies, whatever. Do something where you could actually hurt yourself. Gossip. That's a need for variety. Isn't that interesting? How many of you gossip? Raise your hand. How many are afraid to raise your hand? Raise your hand. Criticism is actually a need. Criticism fulfills the need for variety. People go to horror movies. That fulfills a need for variety. I mean, when was the last time you saw a monster? Never. You see it in a movie. So it fulfills variety, right? Isn't that interesting? Criticism fulfills the need for variety. I mean, if you just are always complimenting people, that gets boring, doesn't it? If you can, dig up some dirt, then it gets juicy. Isn't it? Just get up, chant your rounds, it's the same thing, Bhagavad Gita class. But, some big sannyasi is, out at the movies with some, young blonde girl. Hey, yeah. Variety, let's talk about it. Okay. Okay, so we're going to cover significance. So here are some synonyms for significance. Importance. To feel needed. To feel special. To feel unique. Feel your life has purpose. Achievement, performance, competition, okay, ladies, or men if you're married, or we've all been kids, so maybe we all know. Sometimes kids do bad things because they want attention. They're not getting attention. So people sometimes do bad things for significance. Like, you may know that in America it's become quite common in the last 10, 15 years for some person who is not completely stable to go into a school or a mall with a gun and shoot people. You know about that? It's quite common in America. These are not terrorists. These are just people who want to become significant. And if you go into a school and kill people, your picture is going to be on the front of every paper in the country. You'll be very significant. So some people do very bad things to become significant. Right? So we said ISIS, terrorism, significance. If I'm a gangster and I put a gun to your head, that gives me a lot of significance, doesn't it? And it gives me connection. This gun is connected to your head. And it gives me certainty that if I pull the trigger, I can kill you. It gives me certainty that you're afraid of me. So, violence fulfills those three needs. Certainty, significance, and connection. Did you know that? Isn't that interesting? So if you can help a criminal fulfill those three needs in a healthy way, he doesn't have to be a criminal. He's just trying to fulfill those needs. Because as we said, everybody has these needs and they'll fulfill them in a healthy or an unhealthy way. Well, it's actually not, you could call it connection, but it fulfills the need for variety. Because everybody's different and every scenario is different. I know I used to do Sankirtan, and I found Sankirtan fulfilled the need for variety because everybody's different. And everyone I talked to was different. And it was kind of interesting. Book distributors meet thousands and thousands of people every year. So you get a lot of variety. And you feel significant because in contribution, because you've done something. So that's why sometimes those who are preachers, they're addicted to preaching because they fulfill so many needs by preaching. Significance, growth, contribution, connection, certainty, variety. And like we said, and when you fulfill your needs doing something, you can do it every day. Last week I was in Noida, and I gave Bhagavatam class at 8, and then we started the workshop at 10. It went till 5:30, and then I do classes online, at night. So then I started class at 7 and I finished at 8. So basically I was kind of like 12 hours straight, you know. And I'm not like a young boy anymore. And so people say, well, how can you do that? But because it's fulfilling so many of my needs, I'm addicted to it. So I can just keep doing it, you know. Like, you know, you might think, oh, Mahatma Prabhu, you were busy today. You gave Bhagavatam class, you did, you know, there was a fire sacrifice, now you're doing this. I go, this was vacation today. This was nothing. You know, last week, 12 hours. But when you like it, you get energy. So we're going to go tomorrow, we're going to look at your life, you're going to look at your life and you're going to see how you're fulfilling your needs. And if the things that you do are fulfilling your needs. Every one of you, you have 6 needs, but 2 of these needs are most important. And we're going to discover that tomorrow. 2 of your needs are most important, and if you're not fulfilling 2 of those needs, you're not going to be satisfied, at least on the material level. But you can relate this to the spiritual level also, because you can fulfill these needs spiritually. And if we're not fulfilling our most important spiritual needs, we'll be empty. Kind of a Varnashram outlook on this. So, have you ever seen anybody tear people down? Tear people down, pull people down. Why do we pull people down? For significance, right? So let's say you built a building in the city, and then later on people built bigger buildings around you. So now how do you become significant? You just blow up the other buildings. And now you're the tallest building. So some people fulfill their need for significance through criticism. So if you ever criticize, of course you're devotees, so you probably never criticize, right? I can't imagine devotees criticize, can you? You've never seen a devotee criticize, right? I'm only joking. So, we're probably better at it than non-devotees, because we have more to criticize, because we have higher standards, right? You agree? So, if you ever find yourself criticizing, just remember, it's probably because you're trying to fulfill your need for significance. And you're doing it by pulling people down, rather than pulling yourself up. You know, you don't have to blow the other buildings down, just add a few more stories on top of yours, and yours will be the tallest. So if you want to be significant, become better. But it's an unhealthy way to be significant by criticizing, pulling people down. Does that make sense? Yes? Want to look like, wants to stand out, he wants to be significant. Right? So when we want to stand out, we do something different, it gives us significance. Significance comes from being unique. So that's an example. What's another way you could be significant? You could become really good at something. You could become the best surgeon, or the best pujari, or the best cook. You could become the best at something, and that will give you a feeling of being special. I'm not saying it's bad. That's how you fulfill, it's one of the ways you fulfill your need to feel valuable. Right? You do something really well, and you can feel valuable in the service of Krishna. So we all have that need to feel valuable. Another way you can feel significant is to have a lot of degrees. So when you print up your business card, you have a lot of titles after your name. Right? I have only one title after my name, Mahatma Das UDO. And nobody in India knows what a UDO is. A UDO stands for University Dropout. So that's my title. And I know no one in India would put that on their card. They would be quite embarrassed to put UDO on their card. They want to put BBS or whatever it is, BSc, MA, PhD, Isn't it? So we get significance from titles and positions and the cars we drive and the watches we wear and the labels on the clothes. It all gives us significance. That's bodily consciousness. So in materialistic society, that's one way you achieve significance. You have a watch that cost 6 lakhs rupees, called a Rolex. And you have to make sure when you're giving your lectures. So as I was saying, isn't it? Because I just don't want to be an ordinary guru. I want to be a significant guru. Excuse me a moment here. I'm so tired today. Isn't it? Do you need a 5 lakh rupee watch to tell the time? As the joke goes, my Casio watch tells the same time as your Rolex, and it only costs 250 rupees. Does someone need an expensive car to sit in Delhi traffic and move at 10 kilometers an hour? No, but it gives you significance. Yes or no? So we do unhealthy things to become significant, and then we do healthy things like help people, because when you help people, you feel good about yourself. Significance, it's not a bad thing. It means you feel valuable. You feel that you've done something worthwhile. So just like when we spread Krishna consciousness, we feel significant. I've done something worthwhile, isn't it? Or maybe you feel significant today because you've come to this class and you've learned something. You say, hey, I learned something today that maybe this class has never been taught in India before. And you're the first ones, and you feel like, I know something that most Indians don't know. I feel special. So you can feel significant by learning, by growing, by sharing. Now here's a problem. Sometimes you become so significant that you become famous and you lose connection with people. You kind of, they say it's lonely at the top. You go so high, there's no friends up there. So you've set yourself apart, right? So then the next one is connection. So you don't want to become so significant that you lose connection. Wait a minute, I want to... some synonyms for growth. No, what are we on? We're on No, we're on significance. Wait, I want to give some synonyms. I think I already did, right? Yeah, we already did. Okay. Oh, yeah, here's some other unhealthy ways. You have the word bullying in your country? So bullying can give you significance? Killing someone can give you significance? Low self-esteem can give you significance, because then you can become the lowest. Like I was saying, you can be the first on the airplane or the last. So if you can't become the best, you could become the worst, and then you could get recognition for that. Like, you can't win the race, come in last place. People will remember that you came in last place. So low self-esteem could be a way to fulfill the need for significance in a perverted way, by being insignificant. The most insignificant. Okay, so now we're going to go to connection. Some synonyms: togetherness, unity, warmth, when you help other people, you get connection, right? You can connect to nature, you can connect to God, you can connect to music, art. Now, something which is becoming more popular in your country is that when people don't have human connections, they have animal connections, mostly dogs and cats, not cows. Cows are, people don't have cows as pets in America. So they'll mostly have dogs. They'll make connection with dogs. So if you don't have human connections, you want to have some connection. Like we're saying, nobody can be alone. Right? So, yes. So, any way you help people, any way you have a good family, any way you're kind or supportive. In Krishna consciousness, just any kind of way we can bring people together in Sangha, it creates connection, right? No, so here's a negative way. I was talking about this before, but it'll be a little clear. There's one way you can get connection with people is by having problems. Because when you have problems, people will come and help you. And I read stories about people who, when their friends weren't coming to see them, they would actually make themselves sick subconsciously and end up in the hospital, and then their friends would come and see them. Isn't that crazy? They were becoming sick, psychosomatically sick, and they weren't consciously aware they were doing that, because whenever they got sick, they would get sympathy. Do you know anybody like that? They get sick all the time? Because if somebody gets sick all the time, that's something possibility to look at. It may not be the reason, but it's possible. That if they feel nobody loves them or nobody comes to see them, maybe they'll get sick subconsciously in order that people can come see them. Or they'll just create problems in their life, so they'll get sympathy from people to solve the problems. I'm not getting sympathy until I get a problem. So my connection will come through having problems. Now here's another thing. You can connect with yourself. That's also part of connection. And sometimes people become depressed to connect with themselves. Because when you're depressed, you're alone with yourself. And you're lamenting how bad things are. And it actually creates a deep self-connection. Isn't that interesting? Now here's another one. Sometimes you have a problem and you know how to solve it, but you don't because the problem is fulfilling one of your needs. Should I say that again? Sometimes you have a problem, but you don't solve it because it's fulfilling one of your needs. Like I was talking about that devotee who didn't manage things well because it fulfilled his need for variety. So he created problems to fulfill his need for variety. Or you create a problem to fulfill your need for connection. And it could even be certainty, because that becomes, the problem becomes a stability in your life. Isn't that weird? And it could give you significance, that you have a bigger problem than all your friends have. You think your life is difficult. You have no idea what I've gone through. Your problems are nothing compared to mine, so now I'm significant. And so therefore I have to keep those problems bigger than yours, and that way I'll remain significant. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. I mean, I'm not asking you if that's sane, I'm just saying, do you understand? I think you understand, right? Yeah, it's not sane. But the point is, we do this, and as I'm saying this, probably a lot of you are thinking, yeah, I've done that. Sometimes you might create problems in your life because it makes your life exciting. If you didn't have those problems, your life would be quite boring. Right? Sometimes in relationships, sometimes the relationship, it's too good. Nothing ever goes wrong. So why not create some problems and have some good fights and make things exciting? Right? It's just like it's too smooth. It's just getting boring. So I'll create some problems in it. Right? Some people like challenges. So they'll create problems so they can deal with challenges. Is that weird? Is it true? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now it's said that these first four needs, you'll always find a way to fulfill them. But the last two, they're coming from a higher place, because it's more about contribution. So, from the material perspective, fulfilling the first four needs, it doesn't really make people happy, but fulfilling the last two makes them happy. Growth and contribution. From a material perspective, it gives us the greatest happiness. And I think you could say in Krishna consciousness that it's also true. If you're not growing in Krishna consciousness, what are you doing? You're dying in Krishna consciousness. If you're not giving Krishna consciousness, it's probably because you're not growing in Krishna consciousness and you have nothing to give. So the problem is, if you meet the last two needs in unhealthy ways, then obviously it's not going to make you happy. Okay. Oh, here's a really interesting concept. Krishna tells Arjuna, you should fight, but don't be so concerned if you win, and don't worry if you lose. Just be attached to fighting because it's your duty. So the idea is, it's more about becoming purified through your occupation than external success, isn't it? Because it was through his occupation he was going to become purified. Right? So, non-devotees have this concept also, that if you are working to achieve a goal, you're not actually happy achieving it. Once you achieve it, you're happy in the process of achieving. And you actually grow in the process of achieving. And because it's not so much what you've achieved, but what that achievement made you. That's the growing process. So they say, it's not, I don't think it's so relevant to us because we live our lives, live this way. But they say, whenever you have a goal, whenever you achieve it, you always need another goal. And for us, because we're spreading Krishna consciousness, we always have more to do than we can possibly do. We don't really have that problem so much, so we're always kind of growing. But anyway, the idea that you grow through your actions, that's what's the important part. Not what you've accomplished per se, but what you've become through the service that you do. So that's the idea of growth. Then here's another idea. What you get won't make you happy, but what you become will make you happy. It's a nice mantra. So like, what you achieve is not the cause of your happiness, but what you become as a person. So if you don't grow, what happens? Especially for devotees, I think this is really important. Because as devotees, if you don't grow, you tend to become quite unhappy, isn't it? Because you've given up material happiness, and if you're not growing in Krishna consciousness, then you don't have material or spiritual. So it's really important for us to always be growing in our spiritual life. Learning. Always learning more. Reading more, coming to more classes, going online, listening to seminars and lectures. Always learning, talking, discussing, sharing, reflecting, introspecting. That's when we're the happiest. One time Prabhupada said, we are all philosophers. And we should always be talking philosophy. We should always be discussing Krishna. Because that way we're always growing. Good japa. Good japa, you'll grow very quickly. Bad japa, you stay the same. You become unhappy. I ask the devotees, when I do my japa workshop, I say, when you chant bad rounds, how do you feel? After your 16 rounds, how do you feel? And they say, I feel discouraged. I feel like I let my spiritual master down. I feel like I could have done better. I feel like today's going to be difficult. And we make a whole flip chart of negative feelings, negative emotions that you get by chanting bad rounds. So I think for us as devotees, we're more sensitive, we're more affected by not growing than even non-devotees. Because a non-devotee can always come home at night and get drunk and just forget that they're miserable. But we can't do that. Right? So if we're miserable, we don't forget it. We don't go home and eat a gallon of ice cream. We don't go home and watch 10 movies. We have to grow in Krishna consciousness to be happy. You agree? Yeah, so for us, this point is it's much more relevant, I think, than for non-devotees. And then the last one is contribution. And the interesting thing about contribution is that when you're inspired, then you want to contribute because you're overflowing. So for us, the best thing we can do to contribute, and contribute for us means spreading Krishna consciousness, is to grow. Because out of growth comes an overflow. And the overflow goes out into other people. let's say you're doing really well in Krishna consciousness. You're chanting really good. And that's how he convinced them to read the book, because he was emanating this kind of energy of just extreme bliss and happiness, and they just look at him and go, okay, I'll take the book. Because they'd never seen anybody like that. So his enthusiasm to distribute books was coming from his experience of Krishna consciousness, and it just overflowed. So growth is very important for us to be happy, and it's very important for us to contribute, because it becomes the outgrowth. Contributions is the outgrowth of growth. So we're going to give you exercises where you can put all this into practice, where you'll relate it to your life, and you'll see if there's any unhealthy ways you're fulfilling your needs and how you could fulfill them in healthier ways. And then you're going to look at the different areas of your life and see how this relates to different areas of your life, and we'll give you exercises. So today was just theory, and tomorrow is practice. But I would like to end by saying, as I said in the beginning, this is why people become devotees, to fulfill these needs. And if we help them fulfill these needs, they'll stay devotees their entire life. And when people are coming to Krishna consciousness and you're helping them, be aware that they're looking to fulfill these needs. And when devotees are having difficulty in Krishna consciousness, ask yourself, what needs are they trying to fulfill? Now, if you're married, or if you want to have good relationships, try to understand the needs of your partner. What need are they trying to fulfill? Like, gentlemen, when your wife says, you always come home late and you don't call, it's a need for security, stability, predictability. And you might think, don't bother me, I'm busy. When I come home late, it's because I'm at work, I'm not trying to avoid you. But now you understand she has a need for certainty. She wants to know, because she has to put the kids to bed, and the kids want to see you. We don't know what time you're coming home. Should I put them to bed? Should we eat without you? She needs to. So now you understand. You go, oh, okay, now I understand. Okay, so now you make sure to call when you're late.